Hello everybody. It's been a year, maybe a little bit longer, since I showed anything to do with this engine. But this engine, for the ones that have subscribed to my channel and haven't watched the first video or two on that 67, this engine is the one that was in my car when it was wrecked. And it sat up here in the field for 40 years with no front clip on it, no intake, and rusted down. The block is not my original block. It is an original block to one of the 67s out here, but not my car. So other than just keeping it as a coffee table or something, it's not really worth anything to me because it's not numbers matching to anything. Its story is worth all its value, you know. That crank may never run again, but it is a steel 396 crank, and it was a 2020 crank, 20 over, you know, 20 under, 20 over on whatever, on the mains and rods, because Dad rebuilt this engine and it had to have a crank put in it. So it was good, runnable crank. It was a running engine when that wreck happened. So I'm going to cut that crank out of that motor, and by cutting it out, I mean I'm going to cut the rods, and we'll see if there's any possibility at all of that crank ever being ran again. And if there is, or there isn't, either way I'm going to save it. But if there is, there's a possibility in the future that I might try to run that crank in a 427. 396, 427, it's the same stroke. They balance different, but since I'd be building the motor anyway, I could just have it balanced. So there's a sliver of hope that that crank might live on, and if not, it can be a conversation piece, I guess. So I'm going to show you cutting some of this out with a torch, and I hope you enjoyed the video. All 8 rods are cut. Nylon gear. It would have been nice to have been able to get that apart without doing that, but you know. So all the mains are undone. The chain's cut. There's nothing really keeping this engine besides rust from letting me have that crank. So I'm going to get a pry bar and get it out, and then I'll show you what it looks like. All right. At a future date, I might attempt to get those pistons out, possibly the cam out, just so we can see how bad it actually is. But you know, it's pretty well guaranteed that it'll never run again. But anyway, I noticed it'd have to have 8 sleeves and all kinds of stuff, and it's just a 396. It's really not worth it. But most of the main bearings are still stuck on the crank, and I've still got 4 rod ends I've got to get off, but I'm sure that looks bad to yins, and really it is. Alright, I showed you a little bit of it outside. I came in here and I took the remainder of the rods and bearings and stuff off the crank. At a later date, I'm going to sandblast that crank, clean it, polish it, and see what it looks like. We'll check it with a mic and stuff, and we'll see if it's runnable at 20. If it's runnable at 20 after being polished and everything, then yippee. All I have to do is have it balanced and stuff, and I would have a crank to put in something. If it's not runnable at 20, I can have it ground to 30 and balance it and everything, and it would be a runnable steel crank and something. You don't get much dirtier than this, so it rings pretty good, so I would assume that it's not cracked. Something that is cracked, and was cracked in 1976 when Dad put this engine together, shortly before he sold it and shortly before it was wrecked, is this balancer. You see that little bit of a line at the keyway. I didn't even have to use a puller. It fell right off. But it was like that when he sold it 40 years ago. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I guess, I can pretty much say that it's different. I've heard of people in junkyards and stuff having to cut rods to get to a torque converter bolt or something because the engine's locked down. But I've never seen anybody cut one with a torch. And I had to cut out all 8 rods to get that crank out of that engine. So, will it run again? Who knows? It might. It might not. But we know now what the Deep Sea 396 crank looks like out of the engine. I'm willing to bet that the majority of that will polish out, but anyway, see you again next time. Bye.